Earlier this week at the National Action Network Convention, I had a chance to interview a number of cabinet members of the Biden administration. One of them, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. I sat down with the secretary and started by asking him where our country stands in light of recent hate crimes against Black and LGBTQ communities.
Well, I think we're at a vulnerable moment for vulnerable people, and we have to concern ourselves not just with the injustice that can come to people from institutions, but also the way it is randomized and the way that there have been hate crimes, the way that there have been attacks, including things that we know that we can do something about with the policy tools that we have. I know the entire administration is focused on that. For our department, things like making sure transit is safe and accessible for everyone, and that everyone is fear-free as they're just going about their day, going to work, going to see loved ones. It's a top priority and something we're very focused on.
The train derailments that we've seen has been of major concern to you and your department. And what are we doing in government, Department of Transportation and others, to really make those that are the manufacturers, the owners, and others do what is appropriate, necessary, and required to make people safe that are traveling on the railway?
Well, it starts with accountability, and Norfolk Southern is facing accountability, first of all, because EPA is holding them responsible for the cleanup for the mess that they made, and our department making sure that safety rules and regulations are followed. Safety depends on tough rules and strong enforcement. From the moment we got here, we did things like resuming safety audits that the prior administration had hit the brakes on, but we know that there can be more. So while we're pushing with the tools that we have, we're urging Congress to make it possible for us to hold those railroad companies to a higher standard. Now, these freight railroad companies, for as long as they have existed, have famously had a lot of clout and a lot of ability, especially in Washington, to push back on safety regulations, to water down the rules. But I believe now is a time when the standards for these railroad companies and their accountability needs to get tougher, not weaker. I'm encouraged that there's bipartisan will to do this, but that needs to turn into law so that we can go forward and implement that law.
Has any of those on the other side of the aisle, Republicans, been resistant to the pressure that is needed to put on some of these companies?
Oh, yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing folks, for example, some, but not all, congressional Republicans say, well, you know, let's wait until all of the reports and the investigations are done a year from now, then maybe we can do something. Our view is let's act now. And if we learn more a year from now from more research, more analysis, more reports, great, we'll do more then. But why stop? Because part of what happened in East Palestine, in addition to the impact on that community, is that the whole country woke up to something that I think not a lot of Americans realize. I don't think most Americans realize that derailments have been happening every single day in this country. If we're going to do something to change that, it starts with accountability for these companies.
One of the big concerns at this convention that came up that you addressed head on is the disparity in road fatalities. A lot of people don't understand, even down to road fatalities, it's not equal.
That's right.
And it's something that you took on at this convention and you've taken on. Tell us about your concerns and the steps we're taking to try and deal with that, because that's a major, major problem.
It is, and it's something that deserves more attention, which is why I'm working to bring more attention to it. We've got a crisis when it comes to roadway fatalities in America. We lose about 40,000 people every year. It's a level that's comparable to gun violence. And we see a lot of racial disparities. Black and brown Americans, tribal citizens, and rural residents much more likely to lose their lives, whether it's in a car or as a pedestrian being hit by a car. There are a lot of reasons related to discrimination, related to even the ways that roads are designed and built. Who has access to a safe street design that's got crosswalks and good lighting? Who doesn't have that access? That can drive disparities, and we have a responsibility to act on that. Now, the good news is we have resources to get that done now, thanks to the infrastructure law that President Biden signed about a year and a half ago now. We're able to target these safety opportunities like funding for a safer roadway design or something else that the community wants to make happen, we're able to direct those funds where they're most needed. And we're urging communities to continue applying. We just did our first round of grants, not just for things that are ready for construction, but for communities that want to go through that exercise of planning, because everybody knows that corner where they're worried about their kids being able to safely get picked up by a school bus or make their way to school. Everybody knows that curve in the road that you try to avoid at nighttime because so many people have had a crash there. We have to act and do something to save lives, and we have to recognize that the impacts of this have not been equal.
So you've been able, out of the infrastructure bill that President Biden has signed, able to put some resources aside to address these disparities directly?
Absolutely. About $1 billion going out through a program called Safe Roads and Streets for All, and that's just one example. And we're working with communities, including communities that haven't always had the resources to successfully come to Washington and get that federal funding. It's why we also launched an effort called Thriving Communities to provide the technical assistance. Often it's lower income communities, communities with a higher share of minorities living there, that have been less likely to have the dollars, even just to hire the staff who know how to get those federal funds. So we want to make sure that we're working with those communities on the front end so that they can succeed.
I have to ask you this because we've become friendly down through the last few years. You went to Sylvia's restaurant with me in Harlem. You were a big hit. What's the future for Pete Buttigieg after being the Secretary of Transportation? Have you thought about it?
Right now I'm so absorbed in seeking to do a good job in the job that I've got. There's never been a better time to work in transportation because of the funds that we have. But also, there has rarely been as challenging a time. We've seen the most disruptions come at our transportation system since 9/11. Most of them partly or totally related to COVID, affecting everything from container shipping and supply chains to airline cancellations. So I've got my hands full. I know the most important thing is to do a good job for the country, for the administration right now, and then we'll see.
All right. Thank you so much for being on Politics Nation.
Appreciate you having me on.
All right.